Welcome to round two of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League presented by McMunn and Yates. I'm Dave Anthony and very excited to be joined on the preview panel again with the esteemed Kevin Pauls of the Niverville Nighthawks and Cody Buhler of the Portage Terriers. Gentlemen, thanks for doing this look ahead, look back, and I cannot wait to see what round two's got in store if round one is any indication of the type of skill and games we're going to see. Kevin Pauls, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts of the Niverville-Steinbach series and what you expect Steinbach to carry over for their matchup against the Blizzard.
Well, in a series, it ended up being 4-0 for the Pistons. I thought the games were relatively close, the last two finishing off 3-2, obviously. But the Pistons proved why they deserve to be here, and that's with, experience through some of their tenured players like Hunter Degelman, for example. Their defense is so good. They cover their zone so well, and they move the puck so well. And they also got solid goaltending from Cole Plowman. So, all indications lead to them rolling here into the second round and putting up a good fight against the Blizzard.
Yeah, a big part of that series was depth scoring. They got goals from all four lines. The defense chipped in. Even Cole Plowman picked up an assist in the opening round. Cody, when you see a team like Steinbach going up against a team like the Blizzard, does depth kind of jump out to you as being the biggest difference, or is there something else?
Well, I think depth is going to be important, and I think fatigue could be a big factor as well. It is only the second round versus the final, but still, the Blizzard had some major intense games against the Dauphin Kings. That 5 overtime game, stuff we just haven't seen. And so when you go to Game 7 with some heavy duty, intense overtime games, fatigue could be a factor versus the Pistons, who have the depth, who are basically just now getting warmed up after one round against Niverville ended in 4 games. They've had time to rest, hopefully heal up some of those minor bumps and bruises, I'm sure. And so it's going to be tough for the Blizzard to now, after that big emotional win, get up for another series against a tough team like Steinbach.
Kevin, do you think the Blizzard, though, can ride that emotional high? I mean, the Roy H. Johnston was buzzing. It was an electrifying win, maybe one of the biggest the Blizzard have had in a number of years. Can you see them carrying that emotion over? And maybe a short turnaround is the best thing for them.
Yeah, in order to keep that wave rolling, maybe that is something good in a short turnaround. But going that deep into those games, playing a combined 8 overtime periods in the last two, it's just an unreal amount of minutes played. But if you look at the matchup here between Thomas Anderson and Cole Plowman, and the two goaltenders that lead goaltending statistics in the MJHL playoffs, so it should stack up to be a pretty interesting series. I don't expect the goal scoring to be so anemic. I think there will be some there, but it's going to be a tall task, and OCN's going to need to dig deep for this one.
Yeah, they got some guys that stepped up, though. I thought Riley C. had a really good series. Sebastian Hamming, again, really, really strong. Cody, from the Blizzard's point of view, again, we talk about that riding of the high, and they got some dynamic players now that have got quite a lot of playoff experience in just a single round. As a guy who knows, it takes you a while to learn how to win in the playoffs. Do you believe the Blizzard learned enough in round one that it maybe balances out the experience Steinbach comes in with?
Well, we were talking about Sebastian Hamming before as well, going into that series, and how I said he's a guy to definitely watch. And so it's great to see him have a good series. And I think, like you said, learning is important in the playoffs. And I think emotional highs are great right off the hop. You need that in game one. After game one, you kind of forget. Everything just goes into what's going on in the series. So if OCN does want to do well in this series, they're going to need to keep that emotional high into game one and pick up the win early. Because if they fall down and lose in game one, and then after that emotional high is kind of over, it's going to be hard to kind of get back up for game two and the rest of that series. And so I think they need to take that into game one. If they want to take the series, they're going to need to win on the road in Steinbach. And this is actually the farthest apart that any two teams can be in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. And so, one of the other interesting things about this series, probably the two smallest arenas in the MJHL. And so they're both, not from just a fan's perspective, but from the actual physical size of the ice. So they're going to be familiar with that style of ice and that size of playing surface. I think it could be a pretty good series, but I think the fatigue of the Steinbach, or the fatigue of the OCN Blizzard, is going to hurt them, and the strength of the Pistons is going to, I think, carry them.
Yeah, it's going to be a maybe especially early on rest versus rust, and Steinbach needs to hit the ground running because all of a sudden defending home ice is a little bit more pressure, Kevin, and Steinbach maybe needs that to get going, but the attention's going to be on them, especially in game one. They need to hit the ground running because the Blizzard will be, and like Cody said, it's maybe managing that dip if it does come if you're the Blizzard.
It could do. I mean, with the Pistons, with the way they worked with the Nighthawks, they didn't take them lightly. There was a great deal of pushback from Niverville in that series, and the Pistons held the line pretty good. And I think only trailed at one point in that series on the scoreboard. So, they've got a lot of experience and depth to fall back on. If anything, the Blizzard themselves will need to play like they did in those overtimes. It was making sure they got out of their own end. They defended like crazy in front of Thomas Anderson. And I think it just boils down to executing through the neutral zone because that's one place where the Pistons make life very difficult. So it's going to be a tall task for them. But if they play some desperation hockey, they might be able to throw a wrench into the Steinbach Pistons' plans.
I thought the Blizzard carried especially the overtime in game seven, and they carried a lot of the play in that series against Dauphin. Now, Dauphin was strategic in their defensive alignment, and I expect Steinbach to be similar to that. And a lot of shots from the outside, Cody, and you're a guy that I think believes in the more shots, the better. That's how they won in game seven. A shot that gets blocked, a save, and then the rebound, they follow up and score. The Blizzard are going to have to shoot from everywhere. It's got to be kitchen sink style hockey. And Steinbach's going to have to be aware of that in that home plate area.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer in more shots, the better. But looking at the standings and looking at the numbers, I'm a numbers guy as well. I love the stats and looking at some of those intricacies. In this series, you do see a pretty big gap in the points of where they finished in the standings. Steinbach first with 97 points. The Blizzard 15 points back with 82 points. That's a pretty sizable gap, especially coming into round number two. And when you look at both of their offenses, from the teams that made the playoffs, the OCN Blizzard had the second fewest goals out of all 8 teams that made the playoffs from the regular season. And then when you look at goals against, Steinbach had the best goals against in the league. I think it's going to be tough for the Blizzard to find offense. And so throwing lots of shots at the net, they're obviously going to have to try some different things to get the puck past. And maybe they win a 2-1 game, or maybe they win a 1-0 game. And that might be the way that they're going to have to win in the playoffs in this series.
Absolutely. So before we get to our series predictions, let's go to a player that you are going to kind of be focused in on in this second round series. Kevin, we'll start with you. A guy for Steinbach and the Blizzard that you kind of have circled as your must-watch players.
I'm going to go with the goaltenders on this one. It's too important, to fall on the shoulders of Thomas Anderson and how strong he played. He made some pretty big saves and, deep into those overtime periods, both in Dauphin and at home in the pause. So I think he's going to play an integral part, and it's going to take him to make those extra saves to give his team that chance with the Pistons being so deep. On the other side, too, I'll pick Cole Plowman as my important player from the Pistons because the Pistons have so many weapons at their disposal. I think Cole Plowman, if he plays some stoic net minding and makes the saves he should, he'll give his team every chance to win that series.
And every guy in the locker room always says Plowman doesn't get enough credit for what he does. And Kevin, you saw it in Niverville when they were down a goal. That push they had early, he makes a couple of big saves. He only faced 3 shots in that third period. So the defense does their job, but he's got to make the saves when they do present themselves. And he doesn't necessarily get enough credit if you only read the score sheet at the end of the night. Cody Buhler, a player from Steinbach and a player from the Blizzard that have your attention heading into round 2.
Well, I went with Sebastian Hamming in round number 1, and I'm going to go with him again in round number 2. I think the key for OCN to win in this series is to keep it low scoring and to try and keep it low event hockey on their side of things and to try and strike when they can. I think Sebastian Hamming had a good first series, 3 goals, 3 assists, tied for the team lead in points. So I think he's definitely going to be a key for them again, keeping the Pistons off the board and then also putting up some points as well. And for the Pistons, Kirk Mullen leads the way for them right now, 5 points in 4 games, a 20-year-old veteran. There's so many guys who can get it done offensively for the Pistons, but I think he's going to one that's going to need to keep stepping up in round number 2.
For me, the key player for the Blizzard is going to be Marlon Edwards because I think the line of Riley C., Sam Zagari, Quincy Supreme, they're going to carry their own offensive weight. It's going to be if Marlon Edwards can be a line generator, if he can drag a couple more guys into the fight because they're going to need that consistent offense. And it can't be just one line. they need two, if not for sure, three lines going. And then for the Steinbach Pistons, I think Trey Sauter, it's his time to step up. This is a guy that was brought in to be a playoff performer, a guy that's now been put in a successful spot with Leo Chambers and Grady Hoffman. This is a guy that scored a big goal against the Niverville Nighthawks in Game 4, and a guy that needs to be that difference maker. He's not all flash and dash. He's very meat and potatoes, but he's got to make the smart plays 20-year-olds make, and he's got to be a finisher. So for me, it's Marlon Edwards for the Blizzard and Trey Sauter for Steinbach. Let's go series predictions. I don't want to brag. Did pretty well in round number 1. Kevin Pauls, you did okay. Your thoughts on this series? Who do you like and in how many games?
Well, it's hard not to go with the favorite Pistons. I know the Blizzard are going to bring their best, but I think it's going to boil down to depth here, in which the Pistons carry a big stick. So in this case, I think it's going to be too tough a task for the Blizzard. So I'm picking the Pistons in 5.
Cody Buhler, who do you like and in how many games?
Yeah, I think fatigue is going to be a factor for the Blizzard. I think that the strength of the Pistons definitely gives them the edge. Even if they were both coming out of the exact same series, I give the Pistons the edge, and I think OCN will take at least one game. So I'm going to say I'm going to go with Kevin and say Pistons in 5.
I'm going to go along your lines of thought as well, but I'm going to give the Blizzard, 2 wins in this series. I think it's going to be Steinbach in 6. The Paw's a tough place to play, just like LeBroke. Cody, you talked about that. And those horns, they can start getting into your head, especially as a broadcaster. But, that's a really tough place to play. And that organization, is desperate for some wins. And to see them get Game 7 is great, but they want more. They're not going to settle. So I'm going to take Steinbach in 6. But again, much like I think in round 1, we're going to see some very close games, and it's going to be a really good series going back and forth. All right, series preview, round 2 for the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. I'm Dave Anthony, very excited to be joined on the panel with Kevin Pauls of the Niverville Nighthawks and Cody Buhler of the Portage Terriers. Gentlemen, round 2 features 2 of the top 3 teams in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League in perhaps a heavyweight tilt for the ages. Cody, let's start with you. You saw what the Winkler Flyers can bring against your Portage Terriers. Your thoughts looking back on that series and what made Winkler successful?
Winkler is successful because of their forecheck and their physical play. They are a big team. Most games that they played against the Terriers, they had 17 players in their lineup that were 6 feet or taller. They had a big lineup that could play physical. And it wasn't just one line. Their stars, their veterans, their rookies, everybody was playing on the body. The Terriers couldn't get anything going on the forecheck. They had just a hard time breaking through their defense. The way they play, it's kind of like a swarming style where everybody goes towards the puck. They really try and cut you off, don't give you a lot of options. And they were, again, I've said this, I think 2 or 3 times already, they were finishing off every single check. I know I heard from a lot of fans talking about it. They're like, man, this team is just so physical. And so when you come into a series like that, hopefully fatigue from their perspective isn't a factor in round 2. But if they can keep that going, they're going to be a pretty tough test for any team.
Kevin, the depth of their scoring kind of stepped up as well. Dalton Andrews, surprisingly, doesn't have a goal in that opening round, but he does have 5 assists, and he's been a bit of a playmaker as well with a lot of focus on him. Jace Leegarden has stepped up. Brady Craik has stepped up. So some of the supporting cast has really made a difference. Talk about the Winkler depth and how you figure that might factor into the series against Verdun.
Well, I mean, you have consistent players like Jace Leegarden who put up 6 points, 5 of which were goals, and he had a hat trick in one of those games, a game I was at. And you talk about their size and speed and the way they hit. That's one of the fastest games I've been able to watch from just a spectator standpoint. But we didn't even talk about a guy like Avery Anderson who scored twice and has I think 4 assists for 6 points. So they have guys that they can throw into those spots. They all know how to play hard. The trick is going to be staying out of the penalty box, because I watched the Verdun Oil Capitals capitalize on that the last time there in Winkler. They played a clean game, and they can also match Winkler to a certain degree when it comes to that physical play. But, Winkler just plays such a stifling game, and if they can stay disciplined, they'll be tough to beat in this series.
Cody, in our round 1 prediction show, you picked the Neepawa Titans to win in 7 games. And, I gave you a lot of credit for that pick. It was gutsy, but boy, you were onto something. Neepawa gave Verdun everything they could handle. Did you see Verdun check enough of the boxes to see them be successful in round 2? Or is there an area or two where you saw and go, ooh, that might be something that costs them down the road.
Well, whenever, again, we talked about it in the other series, the longer every series goes, just the more of a toll that it takes on your team, and especially in the early rounds. If you can get through a couple series quickly, a lot of times then you have time to kind of rest up in between. And so that one going 6 games, Nipawa pushing the Verdun to the brink. I was kind of pulling for the Titans because, like you said, in my prediction, I had taken Nipawa in 7, and I was hoping for game 7. Didn't quite get there. But Verdun obviously now gets past Nipawa, and they were the favorite in that series. So now the question is, do they take a sigh of relief that they got past that first round and they had maybe a bit of a scare, or do they just shake it off, keep building momentum, and then go into a tough team against Winkler? So now in this series, they would be considered the underdog if you just look at regular season points. And so I'm interested to see what Verdun team's going to show up.
Yeah, like if you go by regular season numbers, Verdun handled the Winkler Flyers pretty well. They picked up some wins, including one in Winkler, but it's a different atmosphere in the playoffs. And Kevin, you know all about that. We'll touch on that in a sec. But the Oil Capitals as well got some secondary scoring. Grady Lane stepped up in big form game 6. Evan Greening's been really good. Trevor Hunt from the back end has been really good. But they're still kind of waiting for their big guys to load up and really make a game. I thought Josh Latos had a bit of a quiet 8-point first round. If they get their key guys getting loud, that might be the difference because they have got some of the best dynamic scoring in the MJHL.
They can spread it out. They've got some snipers on that team. The way they move the puck, their back end does so well too. And you just don't know when you get some of these matchups. And they did do very well against the Winkler Flyers. And not to lean on the goaltenders again, but Eric Reed and Malachi Clausen had very similar numbers in the first round. And I think it'll boil down to key saves there, but also capitalizing on your opportunities. And it's going to boil down to discipline. And the Verdun power play is pretty proficient, doing pretty well on their own. So this will be a case of making sure those leaders, you talk about the Latos, you talk about Trevor Hunt, who I think is one of the unsung best defenders in this league. Rue Bazin, another player that can play two types of hockey. He can play smash mouth, he can play with finesse. So they have a lot of guys on that team that can spread things around. So they're a dynamic group as well, and they're well coached. I should mention too, Tyson Ramsey does a fantastic job organizing that group.
Cody, you've seen the Winkler Flyers in action. You talked about the physical play. We know that they're going to cross the line. They know they're going to cross the line and end up in the penalty box a few times. So talk about the penalty kill, because like Kevin said, Jace Lee Garden picks up a massive shorthanded goal, but they're very aggressive on the penalty kill. And you cannot sleep even when there's only 4 or even sometimes 3 Flyers on the ice.
Well, it's funny. They scored 1 shorthanded goal the entire regular season, and they scored 1 in the series against the Portage Terriers. Their penalty kill, it's kind of interesting. It looks a little bit different than what a lot of other teams do. When they are on the penalty kill, they like to pin the puck against the boards in their own zone and bring 3 players in to tie it up there as long as they can. It's not just one guy. They kind of move as a unit. And so if you can get past their 3 players that commit, oftentimes that's where the chances come from. And their power play looked really good. I think they had a power play goal in every game. And they were able to move the puck well and were able to get some good dynamic shots and chances on the net. We didn't see a lot from Dalton Andrew. Like you said, he's the guy that there's a lot of room for him to improve in the second round. Trent Penner kind of had games where he was the guy, and then other games where you didn't see him as much. The Winkler Flyers, they've had good goaltending from Malachi Clausen, but he doesn't always have to be great, because the defense in front of him doesn't give up a lot of really good opportunities. They like to not give up a lot of good shots, not a lot of quality scoring chances. And I think that's key for them. And that's what they're going to probably try and do against Verdun as well.
Yeah, and the Verdun power play, they're so dangerous because they have so many different snipers in different positions. They go low to high. You have the guy in front of the net. You got the flank players. You've got so many different options you got to cover. If you guess wrong, you leave somebody open, and that makes Verdun very dangerous. Kevin, I want to talk about home ice before we do players and predictions here. This is going to be fascinating from a fan standpoint. It's close enough for fans from both areas to travel to. Winkler's a very hard, loud building to play in. They have that very similar setup to Verdun, where you almost feel like everybody's on top of you, like the Coliseum. Everybody's looking down on you on the ice. Just take us through your thoughts on which team maybe needs a home ice more than the other.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think Verdun, very solid fan base that, support their team very well. It's fun watching games on TV there and seeing how well situated that rink is. But it doesn't strike me as, like you said, this close proximity that the Winkler Centennial has. It's in literally my backyard. Watching the game there the other day, it's so noisy with all the horns, and the fans are, as engaged as any fan base in this league. And some here in Winkler would certainly argue that they're the best. But I think it'll play an integral role, especially if you get into penalty trouble, especially if the home fans, i.e., the Winkler Flyers, didn't like the reffing about a week ago. That certainly can, impact the outcome of a game. I'm fully behind that.
Yeah, I think Verdun's got they have a rabid fan base as well, and like they do sit a little bit more back, but they're right into it as well. And I know I've gotten into it a few times with fans from both fan bases, so it should be really interesting if both do travel to their respective road games, which I would suspect they do, with Friday and Sunday being a home in Winkler than home in Verdun. Let's go to guys who we believe are going to step up big or need to step up. Cody, start with you. A player or two that you think are going to make an impact in this series. We'll start with the Winkler Flyers.
So Lee Garden and Penner had a really good first series, but I think for them, they're needing Dalton Andrew to step up in round number 2. He's got a cannon of a shot, and he looked good on the power play. And it's one of those things where he's a player you can only keep off the score sheet for so long. And so I think he's going to find his stride in round 2. And at, I think, 6'5" or 6'6", he's a big presence out there. And I think he's going to be key for Winkler in this series. And then for Verdun, they've got lots of good dynamic players. Josh Leto's going to need to break through the tough Winkler defense and get some chances on Malachi Clausen. Clausen is beatable if he can get through the tough defense. And so we'll see how many times Verdun can do that.
Kevin Pauls, a player from Winkler you believe is going to have a whale of a series, or need to have a whale of a series, and a guy from Verdun that is going to catch your attention as well?
I'm going to pick two fan favorites. I've known both these players, or I've been able to watch both of them for a long period of time. One of which was a former Flyer, is a former Flyer, and that's Grady Lane of the Verdun Oil Capitals. He's a guy that takes up room in front of the net. He can smash, he can grab, he can play in the corners. He shoots the puck really well, plays a real physical game. Super fun to watch, in my opinion. Grady Lane is going to play an integral part to the success of the Verdun Oil Capitals. And, you could almost call Mike Svensson his carbon copy for the Winkler Flyers. He likes playing feisty hockey. He likes to play physical. He can also shoot the puck and go into pretty much any area on the ice. But it's going to boil down to both of those players playing disciplined, playing effective, and making the best of their opportunities. But they're going to be so fun to watch. I'm so excited to see this matchup.
I don't think we gave enough love to Eric Reed and how good he's been for the Verdun Oil Capitals, and how many minutes that guy has played this year. He has been asked to do a ton, and he stepped up. And I think, too, a lot of guys in the locker room would say he doesn't get enough credit for making the timely save. When Verdun's feeling it, they're skating downhill, he steps up and makes a big timely save. So, we got to give him a little bit of love. He's not my player to watch, though. I just wanted to say that about Eric Reed. My player to watch is 20-year-old Braden Lewis. He's coming off a 40-point season in just 36 games. He's got 3 points so far in the postseason. I think there's room for him to be a little bit more dangerous. You talk about it in any key series, especially against a team like Winkler that is so deep. You need to have that constant threat. You need to have players on all lines that can put the puck in the net, but not do so sacrificing defensive play. So Braden Lewis is going to be my key for the Verdun Oil Capitals. And on the other side, I really like Jacob Jones. I think he, along with Ashton Fishley with Portage, turned into one of those great deadline acquisitions. And Jones has done so much in the regular season. And you maybe don't need him to be a series guy. You need him to be a game guy. You need a Jacob Jones game where he has a goal and 2 assists, or 2 goals, and he gets you a game. I think he's got that kind of ability. So for me, it's going to be Jacob Jones for the Winkler Flyers. All right, gentlemen, as we wrap up our Series 2 previews, let's get the series predictions. Who and in how many games, starting with Cody Buhler.
Well, I just want to say as well, the Winkler Flyers fans traveled really well. I know the excitement is really starting to build in that community. They had the Orange Men out for a couple of their home games, dressed in the orange morph suits, and I think their fan base is definitely going to help them out in this series. The Winkler Flyers were near the top of the league for most of the year. Verdun kind of coming on later on in the season. I think Winkler's a really strong team, and maybe I'm a little bit biased that I saw them firsthand over this last 5-game series, but they're a strong physical team. They're big. They play to their strengths. I think that they're going to do well against Verdun. So I guess this is me betting against Verdun twice. All the people who are disliking me in Verdun can let me hear it, let me have it online. But I'm going to go with the Winkler Flyers in 6. I think it is going to be a pretty close series.
Yeah, you'll hear it online and in that away press box area when you go on the road next year to Thunder Oil and Gas Place, where we're very accessible for conversation.
There we go.
Kevin Pauls, who do you like and in how many games?
Well, we talked about players we liked, and I'm familiar with a lot of the Winkler Flyers, having worked for them. And, I know Malachi Clausen relatively well, and I think him and Eric Reed are going to play an integral part to their teams in this series. And as much as, I've always been a big fan of the Oil Caps and how they operate, I think they're a fantastic organization. It's been a long time coming for Winkler, too. It's been since the 90s. That they experienced championship success, and watching how these guys operate and seeing guys like Justin Falk and Eric Fair and the coaching staff work, I think this is going to go Winkler's way. I think it's going to be a smash mouth series. I think it's going to be physical, well worth the price of admission because I'll be there. I think Winkler takes it in 7.
For me, this is going to be a series of mistakes. Can Winkler force enough mistakes out of Verdun and capitalize on those? Or is Verdun going to force the Winkler Flyers into mistakes and be able to capitalize? I think it comes down to that. And I'm going to bet that the Verdun Oil Capitals can play a little bit more sound, be a little bit more off the razor's edge, and make a fewer less mistakes than the Winkler Flyers. And I know the Flyers play very physical. I believe the Oil Capitals can too. I think they saw each other off in net. I'm going to take the Verdun Oil Capitals in 7 games. Kevin, you talked about Winkler, feeling like they're maybe due. The Oil Capitals were in the finals last year. Say what you will about how they got there. They got there. And that's a couple of times now that they've been in the finals as an organization that they've fallen short. So they, I think, have learned a little bit. And I think they're going to, as a group, find a way to get through a very, very tough Winkler Flyer team. I think either way, none of these teams coming out in any of the 2 series, none of them are coming out 100%. They're going to leave a part of themselves in round number 2. And it may be who can be the healthiest getting to round number 3 that has the biggest impact. Kevin Pauls, Cody Buhler, thank you so much for your time. Look forward to chatting again down the road and previewing the Manitoba Junior Hockey League finals.